Hi everyone, it's BritSimon. I want to talk to you today about a couple of different embassies that I really think that some of the DV2025 folks need to pay attention to. There are two embassies in particular that I'm really worried about currently in DV2024. They seem determined to rob people of their chances, quite frankly. And that behavior will probably, although not certainly, but probably continue in DV 2025. And it represents a pretty serious risk. The risk is that you will be at one of these two embassies and they will totally ruin your chance of getting a green card. So let me explain to you what is happening and what's causing it. And then we'll talk about what you might be able to do about it. Right? Firstly, the two embassies I'm talking about are Ankara and Accra. Okay. There is also a problem with Addis Ababa, but the problem with Addis is not quite so acute as it is with Ankara and Accra. Ankara and Accra, yes. So it's those two I really want to talk to you about. And also, by the way, I've noticed a lot of people, a lot of DV 2025 candidates are already talking about, I want to move my embassy, I want to move here, I want to move there. All of you are like wasting your time thinking about that at the moment, quite honestly, apart from those of you at Ankara and Accra. If you're not at one of those two embassies and you're talking about moving your embassy already, then you're wasting your time. I really need you to stop wasting your time and start using a little bit more logic. There are very well-performing embassies that people are talking about moving away from. And it's far too early to be worried about embassies, etc. It's far too early. We're still dealing with DV 2024. And, there will be time later for you to change embassies if you truly need to. But now is not the time, and you're just going to add complication to your case by doing that. So unless you're at Accra or you're at Ankara, then please stop talking about moving embassies. It's nonsense. Okay. All right. So let's talk about these two more serious embassies. I think I'll go down here. Right. So what I've done is, let me just toggle this to make it full size. Yeah, what I've done is I've got into Zarthisius's site, brilliant site, and I've looked up Ankara, and I'm looking at the EU case numbers. Now, right now, we're in late May, and we can see that Ankara has scheduled cases right up until July, and so July interviews, that is. And so we've had 10 out of 12 months. So there is going to be some more movement in Ankara, but we can see that Ankara is giving around about 50 interviews per month, right? Now that 50 interviews per month is only moving the numbers for EU, which is their own home region in Ankara. It's only moving that around about 1,000 cases per month. Because as you can see, there are around about 30 cases for EU, a bit more than 30 cases per 1,000 case numbers, just for EU region alone. And then there is, for AS region, there's another, another average of another 20, almost 25 cases per 1,000 for Asia, right, which is mainly Iran. And so it's without doubt that there is going to be a very serious problem that will remain at Ankara because of the low number of interviews that they're issuing, that they're accepting from KCC, and the relatively high density of cases that they have per 1,000 in EU and Asia. And it's so dramatically low that you really have to understand how bad this is. The visa bulletin at the moment is current in EU up to 27,500, right? So all of the people from about 5,000 something up until 27,500 who are EU candidates at Turkey they're all worried that they're going to miss their chance, and most of them will miss their chance. We're probably only going to get to, in EU, we're probably going to get to about 7,000, maybe 8,000 at the absolute most by the end of the year, with 2 remaining months of scheduling, right? For Asia, maybe, which is mainly Iran, but maybe we'll see them schedule, let's say, another 2 months, maybe up to 9,000, perhaps, roughly, right? So it doesn't matter what the visa bulletin says if the embassy is holding back interviews so drastically. And that's exactly what's going on at Ankara, right? So there's not much we can do for that. In fact, for DV2024 candidates, there is really nothing that can be done. We can't sue the embassy. We can't do anything to improve things. The only chance you would have had is to move away from the embassy before you got stuck into the queue of people at AV status at that embassy. But once you're in AV status, then your case is locked into that embassy and you can't get out. Okay, so there's a problem there, right? Now, all of what I just said applies to Accra as well. If I just change this to Accra, and we look at Africa region. So Accra have taken cases up to around about 5,000 something, just over 6,000 perhaps. And they've got an average of about 25 cases per 1,000, and they are issuing 20 interviews per month, right? So they're not even moving the numbers for Africa by 1,000 case numbers a month. So, but with they did take some for July. They took 20 cases for July, and that means that we're probably going to see Accra accepting interviews up to maybe 8,000, thereabouts, roughly, by the end of the year. Everybody else at Accra is going to lose out, right? I mean, it's just amazing that the embassies have the power to make the sort of decisions they're making that will screw people up, right? So that's what is happening in DV 2024. It's very likely to happen in DV 2025 as well, right? And I'll show you why. I'll show you why this is happening. If we start off by looking at Accra, and we look at the immigrant visas issued by the post for those 2 embassies that we're concerned about. If we look historically, we go back a few years, in fiscal years 17, 18, 19, you can see that the green color here was diversity visas, and you can see the yellow color here on the screen was the immediate relative category. So Accra has always done a fair number of immediate relative cases, but they used to do okay on diversity. But if we look now, if we look in fiscal year 2024, they have done a lot of cases for immediate relatives. Almost all of their cases have been immediate relatives. And you can barely see on this chart, you can barely see the diversity cases at all. So they've only issued 72 cases up until the end of March. Absolute bananas. Whereas they've issued for immediate relatives 3,454, right? So the prioritization between those 2 categories, immediate relative and diversity, has been absolutely flipped on its head, absolutely decimated. Even though diversity has got a deadline, the embassy has just said, we don't care. We're going to prioritize immediate relatives because we've got a backlog of immediate relative cases. The backlog built up in the COVID years, DV 2020 and 21, and they're trying to sort of get back and get up to date with those cases. Now, it's possible that they could be reaching the end of the backlog soon. I don't know for sure, but I wouldn't want to bank on it. And if I were you, I would not bank on it if you're at Accra, right? If we have a look at Ankara, we can see very much the same sort of story going on here, where, again, there's been in 2024, 1,428 immediate relative visas have been issued versus 567 for diversity. You can see that it used to be, like if we look at fiscal years 2017 through 19, there were more diversity visas issued than there were immediate relative, right? And then things in 2020 and 21 obviously were low. And somehow they built up a backlog of immediate relatives, which they're now trying to actually get through that backlog. And that's essentially why those two embassies are restricting the number of interviews they give diversity versus the preference they give to immediate relative category visas, right? They're both immigrant cases. The immediate relative has no sunset date, that is not time limited, but is higher priority in the mind of the embassy, and they have a backlog. And so that's exactly where they're putting their effort. They're putting their effort into immediate relatives. Okay, so this will continue probably in DV 2025. So what can you do about this if you're in DV 2025? Well, what it means is if you are a very, very low case number, and I'm going to say ACRA under, let's say, 5,000, maybe under 7,000, something like that, then you're probably okay to just wait for ACRA to get to you. It will take some time. Then, whereas the rest of Africa, you could expect your case number to be interviewed in the very earliest months. In ACRA, you can pretty much expect your case is going to be waiting until, probably summer of 2025, something like that, if you've got a very low case number. If you have a medium or even sort of low to medium case number, let's say any case number greater than about 8,000, and you're at ACRA, right? So you're above Africa 8,000, you're at ACRA, then really you should be moving elsewhere, okay? You should be moving to another country, physically moving to another country. And you should do that soon enough so that your case doesn't get locked into ACRA. Because once your case number becomes current, and which could happen very quickly, it could happen in October or November. If you've got, let's say you've got case number 10,000, right? That could easily become current in October, November, perhaps December. And once your case number is current and your DS-260 has been processed, then you'll be put into the AV status queue for ACRA, and you can't move out of that. It's very, very difficult to move out of that. The KCC will not help you moving out of that queue. Okay, so you'll be locked into that embassy, and your chance will disappear because they will not get to your case number. Most likely, this is my worry right now. I made a similar sort of warning last year, but probably not quite as clear, perhaps not as clear as I should have been. But I'm going to assume the same bad behavior is going to continue at ACRA embassy, and therefore you're going to get stuck in the queue of AV status cases, and that queue will just build up and up and up, and they'll never get to you, which means you'll lose your green card. As simple as that, and there's nothing you can do about it, right? So I don't want you to be in that position. So if you're ACRA above Africa 10,000, probably above Africa 8,000, then you need to move. And your case number is low enough that you need to move pretty soon, like over this summer, before there's any possibility of you becoming current. If your case number is 8,000 or less, you could probably say, hey, it's going to be very difficult for us to move. And so we'll just hang out and we'll see what happens in ACRA, and you can take your chances at ACRA. But that's it, right? That will be your decision made. If I relate the same thing to ANCRA, it's a bit more complicated because it's got two regions. But essentially, if I had a case number again, probably a case number above EU 7,000, EU 8,000, something like that, I think I would want to get out of Ankara, get out of Turkey. And obviously for Turkish people, it's a lot harder to move because they can't get Schengen visas, etc. In a lot of cases. And so, you're going to have to put some thought into that. But again, you don't want to get into a position where you become current. For Ankara people in Asia region, you probably are making a similar sort of decision at around about 6,000 or 7,000 case number, right? Roughly. Now, all of these numbers I'm throwing out there for Accra and for Ankara are guesses at the moment. We don't know the case number distribution. We don't know the number of selectees. There's a lot we don't know. But when we know those things, it'll be too late for you to make a change. And so I actually want you to make a change proactively before you have to make a change, so that there's no risk. Now, let me just backtrack a little bit and say, if your case number is high, really quite high or medium to high in those two embassies, then you actually have more time. So let's say your case number is, go back to Accra. Let's say your case number is sort of 7,000 or 8,000 and below, then you stay at Accra. If it's 7,000 or 8,000 and above, up to, let's say, 20,000, then you're really in the danger zone, because that probably means that you'll become current before we know more information in January of next year. And you really are going to have to make a guess. We're going to be in this dark period between October and December, where we don't have data from the embassies yet. We only get that data in January the 1st of each year. So in January, we will be able to see the exact performance of how Accra is behaving. Same with Ankara, and we'll know, right? But if you've got this number between 7,000, let's say in Africa, let's say 7,000 or 8,000 and 20,000, then it's likely or possible that you will be already locked into the embassy in AV status. If your case number is 30,000 or 40,000 in Accra, then you have time to make the decision later. You'll know more information. Your case number won't become current in October, November, December, and you'll have time to move later. So you're actually in a better position, because your number is so high that you can't get locked in early before you can do anything about it, right? Or before you know. For Ankara embassy, for EU cases, probably above 15,000 or so. Same thing. Your case number is high enough that you don't have to worry about becoming current too soon. So I understand fully that it's fairly complex, but these are the only two embassies that I'm talking about. And I don't want people to start moving around all over the place for other embassies. It's just these two embassies that I'm most worried about. For Addis Ababa, in DV2024, they're going to get current up, or rather their current, their scheduling, I should say, is probably going to get scheduled up to about 27,000, maybe 28,000. And so that's not too bad, because those numbers won't become current early enough that you're totally locked in. So I'm making all sorts of assumptions for all of these embassies that I'm talking about. But I'm hoping you'll understand that there is a sort of specific danger range, particularly in those two embassies I mentioned, Accra and Ankara. And it's that middle range I'm talking about, but where you might go current in the first 3 months of the year. You're locked in AV status and you're screwed, frankly, because you're not going to be able to get out of there. You'll be stuck at that embassy. Okay, so if that's your situation, if you're in that danger zone, then you need to put some serious consideration into moving to another country, so that you can, set up residence in that country. You'll have to prove that you are resident in that country, and you'll interview at a different embassy entirely, and you won't lose your chance that way. And if enough people actually take this advice, then that might actually help the embassy a little bit in terms of the scheduling, right? So I'm hoping that will be of benefit all ways round. Okay. Okay, everybody, complicated subject. I'm sure there's going to be a bunch of you that are confused, so I will answer questions about this on any live sessions that I do over the next few weeks, and I'll try and give you some answers. I'll answer some particular questions. You can throw a number at me. Here's my number. I'm at Ankara or Accra. here's my number, what should I do, right? I'll answer those sort of questions. But again, I don't want you to ask me these sort of questions for every other embassy. It's completely pointless right now doing that, because you don't need to be worrying about your embassy yet in all the other embassies. It's too early to be worried about those embassies right now. It's only these two that I've got real concerns about. Okay, everybody, I hope that was useful. Please give me a thumbs up on the video to let me know what you think about this video. And also, if you could make sure you're subscribed to the channel, that would benefit me. And frankly, it will benefit you. All right. Okay, everybody, have a great day. Bye-bye.